Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've talked a lot about how the plan for the Steelers at quarterback isn't primarily about this year, but it's really about next year's draft class. And a lot of people have been calling in, asking questions about the validity of that plan. What would go behind it? Can the Steelers even pull it off? I'm going to answer those questions and a lot more here on a Friday episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's going to be a fun one. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. More on them later. All right, Steelers fans. So, first and foremost, I want to say I want to thank every single one of y'all that listens to the show, watches the show, but also calls into the show because y'all are blowing up the phone lines. And I appreciate it because that means y'all care what we're talking about. Y'all invested. Y'all ask really good questions. And I can't get all of them all the time, but dang nabbit, like every day I got new ones to cycle through. I'm like, ooh, that's a good question from this guy. And a lot of y'all ask the same questions because everyone's on the right lines. That shows that y'all paying attention, and it's much appreciated here. So we're gonna do an all mailbag episode here. I got 6 questions that I'm gonna be carving through to this, but I wanted to lead off with this one because we have talked ad nauseum, and we'll continue to talk ad nauseum about who's gonna be the Steelers starting quarterback for 2025. But as you guys know, I've been saying since last year that the plan for the Steelers was to wait for the 2026 draft class and then that be their next time to attack and go get their quarterback of the future. So a lot of people have been asking questions about that because that's one of the trickier things, right? We don't even know who's technically going to be in that class. There's speculation. It could be Arch Manning out of Texas, the next prodigal son of the Manning family. It could be Nico Iamaleava of Tennessee. It could be Drew Aller of Penn State. It could be LaNorris Sellers of South Carolina. It could be Cade Klubnik of Clemson. There's a whole bunch of names, and we don't know who anyone for sure will be in it, or if the stock in those players will be as high as they are right now. But we do know that it's slated to be a higher class as far as what it's looking like right now compared to this year. Whereas this time last year, everyone was looking at the 2025 class like it's kind of looks like right now. Like, well, you might get Cam Ward. If Shedeur Sanders might work out, who knows? But after that, it's pretty grim. So I wanted to take some time to answer some questions here. And I want to kick it off with, and again, I appreciate all y'all that call in because we literally have 6 callers and there's about 5 different states represented and none of them are even from Pennsylvania. So Steelers Nation, far and wide, it's awesome to see this. We're going to kick it off with Jordan from Tennessee, who brings up the point of can the Steelers actually land the quarterback they're looking for in this draft class, considering some of the history. But let's get into it. Here's Jordan.
Hey, Chris, this is Jordan from Tennessee. And my question is, so I hear now this idea that Steelers are trying to collect comp picks this year so that next year they can potentially trade up and try to get a quarterback higher and maybe in the first round. I'm curious what the chances are of us actually being able to get one of those top-tier quarterbacks, because when you look at some of the best quarterbacks that have come out in recent years, you've got, like Joe Burrow and, Trevor Lawrence. I know he's not great or anything, but you're seeing a lot of these quarterbacks that are going number 1, Cam Ward this year, 1, 2, or 3. Do we really have a chance if we continue to have like a just above 500 record? What are the chances that we can really trade up and get one of those top level quarterbacks? Or are we just kind of hoping we could maybe try to get within the top 15, top 10 and kind of get lucky? Would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks so much. Looking forward to hearing your answer.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate always everyone who calls into the Locked On Steelers podcast. If you want to call like Jordan did, it's just 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll try to get your question on the show like we did for Jordan. So a few things here when it comes to when it comes to answering questions about that draft class. So yes, there's going to be a battle to go up and get quarterbacks next year, because the Steelers aren't going to be the only QB needy team, right? Like the Giants are kind of where the Steelers are right now as far as quarterbacks and looking. That's why they're both waiting on to see what Aaron Rodgers is going to say. So there's going to be competition. But I remind people, there's always competition to get quarterbacks. When the Chiefs traded up from 27 to 10, there was a ton of people looking for quarterbacks back then. And that, I think that's a natural part of what you go through when you're in this situation. That's why the Steelers are loading up on the comp picks to prepare themselves so that they can be more aggressive and not have to sell the farm in doing so. Now, again, doing this is going to take some aggressive maneuvering. If you go back to Kevin Colbert's early days when he was in his first like 7 years of being the Steelers GM, he was a lot more aggressive than he was in the last like 8 years, and he was the Steelers GM. And the Steelers, he still made some aggressive moves in the final years, like when he traded for Minka Fitzpatrick and some other things that he did. But when they established their core, that's when they got a lot more conservative in the Steelers front office, because they wanted to keep the core players together as long as they could. And they were kind of trying to, their main goal was to kind of keep the same notes on those teams. And then eventually they did rebuild another group there. So if you're the Steelers now, you're thinking like, okay, you're trying to get ahead of things. You're trying to plan forward. So you're not just trying to sell out just to get the quarterback, but you're also trying to give yourself ammunition so that you can sell high to get the quarterback while still keeping your future intact. As far as that, when I say future intact, I mean not trading three first round picks away for one guy, because we've seen franchises do that, right? Like, we've seen, franchises sell out for like Trey Lance or someone like that, and the picks that they give up to get them and how much that sets them back. You don't want to be put in that situation. And listen, the Steelers are also in a position right now where they still need to see first round picks turn into stars again, because right now the first round picks that are still on the roster that this team has drafted themselves are Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Najee Harris is now gone, Kenny Pickett is now gone. So now you're down to Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu. But Terrell Edmonds gone, Devin Bush gone. They didn't have one in 2020. Technically, I guess that would be Minka Fitzpatrick, because that's what he represents. But all those guys are gone. They need first round picks to rebuild and to get younger in a lot of respects, and to build future leaders. And again, they still have a core, but that core is going to age out within the next 3 years. And they need some of these earlier picks to develop into the new leaders of the organization they're going to be the torchbearers that get it passed down from the current leaders. And that's why I don't think you want the Steelers necessarily to sell hard to get the quarterback position where it sells the future. But if you stack your comp picks, you can feel fine. You know what? Here's our first this year. Here's maybe a first next year, and here's a third this year. And then all of a sudden you're working with that quarterback pick, a second round pick, and then you have comp picks because to make up for not having that third round pick that you traded up for. So I think that's one thing that you can look at there, and you can say, okay, like you had something. You had the ammunition for it. And again, that's why they're amassing it. They're trying to put these things together so that they have the ammunition to be aggressive there. But one thing I thought that that Jordan also brings up that's very interesting too is the success rate of, can they actually go get a successful quarterback in this situation? I want to remind people that just getting the quarterback. And this is why I keep saying tanking is not the way here. Teams in general, teams have not just found success just because they've landed a quarterback. They've not won a Super Bowl. That's what I mean by that. They've gotten better. There's quarterbacks that have certainly upgraded rosters. But again, I repeat, since the 2004 draft, when Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger were selected, there has been only one quarterback selected in the top 10 who has led the team that drafted him to win a Super Bowl. And that was Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not a guaranteed thing that you're going to get that guy. And I'm going to make this point later too, because there's going to be some other questions about how the Steelers go about finding this quarterback. But just because you draft the guy doesn't mean it's right. Like when the Steelers drafted Kenny Pickett, it was in a down quarterback draft year and it didn't work out. And I think anybody who studies the history of drafting quarterbacks knows sometimes it takes multiple swings. Sometimes you miss on guys. But the point is that you want to take those swings, because if all you have to do is hit it once, and then you can be good for the next 10 to 15 years. But you also have to be responsible with when you take those swings, because every swing, if you keep taking swings at quarterback, then your roster gets weaker, then your team falls apart. And then even if you somehow land the quarterback, then you have this great quarterback, but you don't have the roster for them to support them. And now you're missing the thing that could have made them competitive. But that all plays a factor into it. I still got a lot of questions here, especially on that situation. We'll get to those questions in a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you, this show is also brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from, instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale businesses efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. We're also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. You stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get right back into the questions here. Jason, all the way out from Oakland, California, wants to keep talking about the potential of getting that 2026 quarterback.
Hey, Chris. How are you doing? Hey, I love your show. I watch it every day. And my name is Jason. I am from Oakland, California. I'm a big Steeler fan and a fan of your podcast as well. Hey, my question is, what do you think of the Steelers' direction is in for drafting a quarterback? What type of quarterback you think we're going to be looking for next year for the draftees that's coming out? And also wanted to see, what do you think about a new direction after Mike Tomlin, whether he resigned? What do you think about what type of coaches the Steelers need to bring them back to promising team? What type of direction? What type of coach? What type of style? Offensive coach? Let me know. Thank you for your show. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jason. As always, 412-223-6644 to call and get your question on the air. Leave your name, where you're from, keep your question under a minute. So let's address the quarterback situation first, then I'll get to the coach aspect of this. I truly think the Steelers are going to look at overall talent. Don't think that the Steelers are trying to bottle things up. We know Mike Tomlin talks about wanting a mobile quarterback. He really wants a mobile quarterback. But the Steelers are going to go with whoever they think can be the better overall quarterback, whether that guy's a pocket passer or that guy's a scrambler, or he's just kind of like a mobile guy that can get outside the pocket and then throw a lead. They want guys that can improvise, guys that can have good traits that translate to the NFL. If you're a runner, if you're a thrower, whatever it is, as long as you are can become one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, they're going to take it. So I don't think the Steelers are going to be typecast into a quarterback situation. I think they're going to go look at who they think is the legitimate, just flat out best. Like, who brings the best talent, who's most likely to succeed in the NFL, and who jumps in and you say, okay, we can plug him right in and he's going to fit right away. That's what you're looking at there. Now, for example, LaNorris Sellers and Nico Iamaleava, they have Jalen Hurts traits with their ability to just kind of play loose, play fast, but also be able to launch a ball and hit a guy accurately downfield, while also presenting the threat of the run. So like those things are there. Arch Manning, more of your traditional pocket passer, but he can do other things. Like he also has good athleticism. So like there's plenty of guys, and I think that's another thing that's happening too. A lot of young quarterbacks are becoming more and more athletic because you kind of need to in today's age. Gone are the days where you can just have pure pocket passers and that's all you had to worry about. They need to be athletic to be successful. So I don't think they're going to be limited on the type of quarterback. It's just going to be about, do you think that guy is franchise quarterback material? That's the question there. Now on Mike Tomlin, I hear this question, and part of my thinking here about this is that if you get the young quarterback, you're probably thinking, oh, well, maybe you get the young quarterback, and if you draft the young quarterback, then if Mike Tomlin if he doesn't get his contract renewed after the next 3 years, or if something else happens, or if he resigns, whatever, and you want to find your next head coach, and you have this young quarterback, maybe you do want to get an offensive-minded head coach for that. But I know there's some people out there that think that that's just the end-all, be-all, that's the best answer that you can probably get right now. But I think that the biggest thing that the head coach needs to be, long before just the guy that looks at the offense, the head coach needs to be a guy that manages the personalities, that manages the team in a way that, like, he's able to balance things back and forth, can be a leader, can be that person that keeps everyone in line, and can be that person that keeps the locker room together even when things are at their worst. And that's something that Mike Tomlin's done well. That was something that Bill Cowher did well. That's something that Chuck Noll exceeded at. And if you read all the stories and hear all the stories about all the crazy things that happened in the 70s Steelers era, that man managed it so well. And I think that's what you want in a head coach. Like, and honestly, like, you look around the NFL, not all these guys are, not everyone that's a new hotshot head coach is a former super offensive minded genius. I mean, look at Dan Campbell. He was a special teams coach. But they liked the way that he coached multiple positions. They liked the way how he worked things there. Sure, you can look at your Nick Sirianni's in Philadelphia and say, well, he was an offensive coordinator. He's an offensive minded coach. Yeah, okay, I hear that. But there's also plenty of other examples there where you can find guys that are just more so leaders than just offensive gurus, and that's kind of what gets you over the hump there. So if I'm the Steelers, I'm looking for a guy that I think is a leader that can bring everyone together. I've said it before. I said this before on Channel 11 for the final word. I said it a few months ago. If the Steelers were to move on, I think that a prime candidate has to be. If the Steelers would move on, or Mike Tomlin would move on, a prime candidate I'd be looking at is Marcus Freeman for what he did at Notre Dame. I just think that there could be something good there to be had. But there's plenty of options. We'll see what that gets to as time moves on. But I thought that was a good question there. But Patrick is going to wrap it up here with the 2026 quarterback talk here. Patrick calls from Connecticut, and I think this is also an interesting question.
Hey, Chris, this is Patrick from Connecticut. I was just calling. I had a thought. We're talking a lot about next year in the draft, getting a quarterback, or acquiring all these comp picks and everything like that. What do you think about the idea of using those comp picks and maybe 2026 picks to trade for a quarterback instead? We don't really have anybody on the staff that, develops quarterbacks well. We've talked about that before. So what do you think about actually using those picks in a trade like they did for Geno Smith this year? Let me know. Thanks. Bye.
So I hear you on that. First of all, thank you for the call. Thank you for calling the question, Patrick. As always, 412-223-6644. A few things. One, I would not characterize the Steelers of having nobody on their coaching staff that can coach up a quarterback. The picture, now, if you saw the picture on your screen, you're watching this on YouTube, there were two coaches you probably recognized and one you probably didn't. One was Mike Tomlin, you know him. One was Arthur Smith, you know him. But the other is Tom Arth. Now, when I say that name, you're probably like, oh, the quarterback's coach. Right. That's who they went and got. And that's who I think actually did a solid job when the things that I heard back about how he was helping Justin Fields and Russell Wilson this season as far as what they were trying to do. I think that the Steelers might have a guy that could develop a quarterback on the roster. But I also think it's important to note, I'm not so sure we've seen the evidence to the contrary that they can't develop a quarterback. It's just that they haven't tried outside of Kenny Pickett. I mean, Mason Rudolph, they turned into a legit league backup, and that's that was a 3rd round pick. I think that's what he was always going to be. They made the most out of that, and that's where I look at. That's where I look at how the Steelers have handled things with quarterbacks, just in general over the past several years. Kenny Pickett, that didn't work out, but he hasn't exactly looked better in Philadelphia. In fact, I'd still say his best days were in Pittsburgh. So there's that. Mason Rudolph, his best days have been in Pittsburgh, which is why he came back. Josh Dobbs, like I'm just naming off the quarterback that they've drafted. Outside of Chris Oladokin in the 7th round. But you got Kenny Pickett, you got Mason Rudolph in the 3rd, you got Josh Dobbs in the 4th the year before that, and then Landry Jones in the 4th in 2013, and then Dennis Dixon in the 5th in 2008. Those are the quarterbacks the Steelers have taken. None of those are develop me into superstar material type quarterbacks. That's where I think the Steelers, if you're gonna be looking at that and saying, well, they don't have any, I don't think they've really had the chance to do it more than just with Kenny Pickett for 2 years, and Kenny Pickett left before they could further his development, and I think that's probably where there's going to be some challenges for the Steelers. So, as far as developing quarterbacks, I still think the Steelers can. I mean, people, I got into it like a week or so ago, where someone said, name me one quarterback that Mike Tomlin has developed over the years and got better under his watch. He said, and you can't say Ben Roethlisberger. And I'm like, oh, so you're not supposed to say the Hall of Fame quarterback who got immensely better in his stats and efficiency and got sacked a lot less and became much better in his progressions and much quicker to get the ball out of his hands under Mike Tomlin's watch. Now, granted, Mike Tomlin wasn't the guy that was hands-on with him all the time, but Mike Tomlin oversaw the people that went in and did it. When they went and got Todd Haley to put him in to be the guy, that was a big part of what developed Ben Roethlisberger to be a better quarterback and to do what I think is kind of clinch that he was a Hall of Famer, because there were questions back after his second Super Bowl win. Once he got in trouble again, people were like, maybe he's not a Hall of Famer. Maybe he's going to have to wait. But I think the numbers he put up proved that. And I think that a big part of that was the culture that was there for the Steelers at the time. So I'd say all that to say, I think that the Steelers might have somebody that you might have some people in place to help develop a quarterback, but it's not been a project that they have. It's not been a project that I think they have embarked on enough times to say that they can't do it in the first place. But we will see how that plays out moving forward. We still got 3 more questions I want to get through. We'll do those next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue taking your calls here on the Locked On Steelers hotline or call-in line. As always, you can call in at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll try to get you on the show here. This one goes all the way out to Montclair, New Jersey. I guess it's not all the way out because it's pretty close. But Brian, take it away.
Hey, Chris, it's Brian from Montclair, New Jersey. I was wondering what do you think about trading this year or next year's first-round pick for Kyler Murray? Let me know what you think. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for the question, Brian. To answer plainly, no, I would not trade a first-round pick for Kyler Murray at this point. Look, I think Kyler Murray brings some interesting tools to the table, but I also look at his contract and, oh boy, there's some money that's being doled out there. Right now, he is under contract with the Cardinals through 2028. If they were to move on from him, they would have to still eat about $52 million of that. They have a lot of money tied up in it. Like they would not be able to be beneficial of that. So I would be staying away from that contract right now. I think Kyler Murray is a talented quarterback, but he's not going to be the guy that takes you over the hump. I think that he's a guy that can help you get there. But I don't think Kyler Murray is that guy. If the Steelers were to trade for Kyler Murray, it would need to be, with the understanding that the Cardinals are going to eat a ton of that money, and that's going to be what they just do with that. But in all seriousness, yeah, I look at that and I don't think the Steelers are trading for Kyler Murray. Now, if he becomes a free agent, that's a whole nother ball game. But I doubt that happens. So I'm gonna just keep it at that point when it comes to the Kyler Murray trade. This next question switches off a quarterback finally, but we're going to get to Kevin here from Fayetteville in North Carolina asking about defensive line.
Hey, Chris. This is Kevin from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Do you think there is a defensive tackle that can be a run stuffer clogger like Casey Hampton was in this draft? And also, do you think there's a possibility maybe the Steelers could bring in a former Steeler like a Hines Ward to become their wide receivers coach? Love your show. Thank you very much for taking my call.
And thank you for calling in, Kevin. As always, you can call 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep a question under a minute. If I was to pick a Casey Hampton in this draft class, it would be Kenneth Grant. But the one thing I'll say about Kenneth Grant is I think he has enough raw power and skill that he's going to be able to get around that and not just be just a pure run stuffer. I think that he's going to have a lot of tools in his shed to be dangerous. And so I think it's important to also remember who Casey Hampton was, right? Casey Hampton played in a different era of football, but Casey Hampton was one of the most run, defended, toughest dudes of all time. He would eat double teams, triple teams. He would just destroy people and not be moved. And that kept James Ferrier, Larry Foote, Lawrence Timmons, all the linebackers of those eras. It kept them clean. And that's very important. It was something that, heck, if you talk to Ray Lewis, he used to get on about, hey, like, when the Ravens were trying to invest in other places and their D-line aged out, then all of a sudden there was an opening. And I think that was where there needs to be some changes there. So if the Steelers are going to go get defensive tackle, my guy is Kenneth Grant. If you want Casey Hampton there, Casey Hampton type there. Now, you don't have to get Casey Hampton type, but again, I just think he fits that bill so well. He stuffs the run. He's big. He's athletic. He'd be a guy that I would certainly be paying attention to there. So let's keep it moving here because we still got one more question here, and this one delves back into a somewhat of a quarterback's conversation, but more of a trade conversation. Here's Tim from North Carolina.
Hey, Chris. Tim from North Carolina. So we've got Metcalf, and we need a quarterback. What about trading Pickens to the Patriots and getting Milton? So maybe that and a third, fourth, fifth round pick. Not quite sure of the value. Would like your opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Tim. So let's get to a few things here. One, if the Steelers are trading away George Pickens, I think it needs to be for a piece that does lead to something. It leads to something else being upgraded, whether that's a position, whether that's a pick, but it needs to be a significant upgrade. And I think that's where I'm not so sure that the Steelers get the return that might say, hey, just go do this. But when it comes to trading away George Pickens, I think the team still very much values what he brings to the table and know that he will be very important for the passing game this year and the passing games in the future. So if he can be, if they can keep George Pickens around, great. But if they can't, which most likely they won't, will they trade him before the season starts? I don't know. I don't know if they'll trade him. But if the Steelers are trading for anybody, I think Joe Milton would be be part of a package. If that was a second round pick, maybe I could go with that. But I think that George Pickens is going to be. It's going to be an interesting market if the Steelers are have to work the dials to get it out there. That George Pickens can be traded and they get the max compensation for it. So lots to explore there. But as far as Joe Milton, because I know that was kind of the main question there, was could they trade George Pickens to get Joe Milton and a pick? I'm glad you threw and a pick there because it would be ridiculous to just not do that. But okay, I really do think that if you're looking at if you're looking at what the Steelers are doing here, it's going to require the Steelers to get more than just a backup quarterback because that's what Joe Milton is right now. And I know that there's a lot of people that really believe in Joe Milton, and I love Joe Milton's tools. I covered him in college, but he still has a lot to develop, and I just think that that's not what the Steelers are looking for right now. So I look at the trade options, and I think there's some interesting ideas there, but I think the main thing the Steelers should get, is they should try their best to get draft picks back if they're trying to make up for the draft picks that they've lost this year. So with the DK Metcalf trade, so get your ammunition up. That's what the Steelers should be doing. I wonder if that is what they're doing right now. Either way, we'll keep you apprised of all the things that they're doing right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. As always, you can find this on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen. And again, you can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're going to take a break throughout the weekend, but when we come back Monday, who knows? Maybe we've got some quarterback news. We'll find out then right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you on Monday.